Welcome to this episode of Unraveling Adoption, an intentional space to delve into adoption's complexities together. A big shout out to the sponsor of this episode, Jenny Becknell. Thank you so much for your support. I'm Beth Syverson. I'm an adoptive mom of a hardworking and emotionally attuned 19-year-old son, Joey, who is struggling to find his path. I'm walking beside him while working on my own personal growth and healing. I'm also a coach helping other adoptive parents with individual and group coaching. Joey and I are committed to helping anyone touched by adoption, and we want to help the general public understand adoption's complexities better too. Today's guest is Sariah Baker. She's an intercountry adoptee from China who was raised in a white Mormon family. Her story is about the many complex layers she has had to examine in order to find and come into her true identity. She's a 31-year-old human resources manager living in Portland, Oregon now, and let's hear her poignant and inspiring story together. Welcome to Unraveling Adoption, Sariah.
Thank you so much for having me, Beth.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. Let's help our audience understand those many layers that you have in your life. And let's just start, from the beginning. You were born in China. Tell us how that all happened as much as you know.
Yeah, of course. So a little bit about China. So I was born in 1992. So in the 90s, there was the one-child policy instructed in the government, of course. And during that time, according to my records, I was found in a park by some police people who took me then in, kind of guesstimated my age by the way I looked and what day it was. And that's how I got my assigned birthday, which is September 16th. And then I was sent to the orphanage where I spent the first 3 years of my life really there. And then by that time, my adopted parents, my father was working for Honda at the time. So while he was working, they had 4 older sons at this time. So they had 4 boys and, they were wanting a daughter. So at this time, I think that's when my sister was in the works, who was also a birth child of theirs. Okay. My mother decided to volunteer at the orphanage because one of her friends was doing that too. So she wanted to come along. And in her words, she saw me and she was like, I want that child. And so from that, my parents kind of did the arduous journey of working on adopting me into the family, which took a lot of convincing, a lot of conversations, and of course, money in its own right. But it was also hard at the time too, because around the mid-90s, there was a book that came out. It was an organization, a human rights organization that had been writing up all these papers about what was happening in the orphanage that I was part of. So there's a book out there called Death by Default.
Sounds dire.
Oh, it is. Yeah. So it's the horrendous things that happened in the orphanage about how they separated the disabled children, how there was sexual abuse going on. They had a incinerator in the back of their orphanage, all these horrible things. And so when that came out, it kind of changed their direction of how they wanted to handle adoption. And so then they said, okay, instead of you guys choosing your adoptee, we will pick for you. It'll just be easy for us. So then we don't have to deal with that. And so I was in the middle of that. So my parents had to kind of work hard to make sure that I wasn't involved in that.
Because your mother picked you. She wanted you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And my dad felt the same way after, I think, our first day there, because what really happened is they kind of fostered me for a bit for that year they were there, just because the Chinese people weren't saying, hey, you need to do this paperwork or you need to do this. It was more like, oh, you want to take this kid? Okay. Take it for the weekend.
Kind of loose.
I don't mind. So my parents had to do a lot of that work. And by that time, my sister was born, and she's born in Hong Kong. And then my dad was the last one to leave China with me, so we get everything set and the paperwork all done, so I could move to America when I was about almost 4.
Wow, that's good that they sat and figured all that out, because I've heard of adoptees getting sent back to their birth country, deported through no fault of their own, but because something didn't work with the paperwork or they didn't quite do it all right. So it sounds like your parents tried to get that taken care of, though.
Yes. That's good. So that was a big deal for them. So it was a success story. And that's kind of what I grew up with most of my life, was just that kind of story of here's how it happened. Here's how we got you, and we're so blessed to have you.
Yeah. We're all happy, joy. Yeah. Yeah. That's the narrative, isn't it?
Exactly.
I bet you looked adorable with those 4 boys. And then your little sister who is, well, you were 4, so she was a little baby. So you were kind of in the middle of these boys and then the other little white girl, right?
Yeah.
So you were just like, I don't know. I bet people just doted on you.
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely, cause, I looking different. And I think, just with the reality of it, I didn't have to wonder if I was different or if I
Yeah.
was adopted. I knew,
Yeah.
but of course there's that very positive spin on it of, oh, being adopted is wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think that is incorporated with some of the different things that I grew up with, and one of them being a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or what they call Mormons, because Mormonism kind of is very big on families. And so
Yeah.
the one big thing that makes them different from other religions is they believe that family is forever. And so it kind of
Oh.
gives you that idea that, oh, this is my forever family, right? It's
Yeah.
almost written out for you that this is your
Yeah.
forever family. And so you don't have to really worry about any other
Oh,
families
yeah.
because you have
Yeah.
got the family.
Okay. So your original birth parents aren't Mormons, so that doesn't count. Is that why?
Well, my birth parents aren't Mormon. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
was adopted into the church. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Mormonism makes
Yeah.
it a forever family. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
So so they have temples, and in those temples you make these promises and stuff. And
Oh.
so that's what put me together with them, and,
Uh,
baby blessings, which makes me a member of their church.
ah,
And so definitely a lot of these specific ordinations that you have
yeah.
to do to be able to move up in that
And
sense.
and so you felt like adoption was very well supported in the Mormon church, maybe even encouraged?
Well, I was encouraged in the sense of, you get to be a forever family. It's a kind
Mhm.
of good feeling. Or
Mhm.
if I ever did think about my birth family, you have the feeling of, oh, when I die, I'll see them in heaven, so it's not going to be a problem. So
Mhm.
it's well answered. You don't have to make there are no questions really
Yeah.
about who you are or where you're going to go and what will happen to you when you die. It's
Yeah.
just very well laid out. So I didn't have to worry about that,
Yeah.
but I did.
Until dun, dun,
But I
dun.
did.
Yeah. So you can go along with that for a while. And some people do their whole life, which is
Ah.
fine. I mean, everybody has to figure out themselves. But you hit kind of a wall. What happened?
Yeah. So I think definitely part of it was, again, you're a part of a forever family, but experiences happen. And one experience that I think is significant for mine, and it happens, and it's sad and tragic sometimes when it does, but I was sexually assaulted by a family
Mm,
member.
so
And
sorry.
that rocked my world in the
Yeah.
sense that here's a family that I'm supposed to feel secure and safe with,
Mhm.
and now I don't.
Mhm.
And the fact that my family, my parents didn't get me therapy, they didn't discuss, like, let's talk to you about why this happened or
Oh.
what happened.
Mm.
Instead, they asked the 9-year-old, like, do you want therapy? And I'm like,
And
I
you're
don't
like,
know.
I
Do
don't even know
I?
what that is.
Well, maybe. I don't know. So
Mm.
for them, it was a write off of, okay, maybe this won't impact her. Maybe she'll be fine.
She'll be fine. She'll be fine. Just keep going. Just
Right.
keep
And
going.
so I think that trauma, right? You're part of a
Yeah.
family where everything is perfect and good,
Yeah.
and you have these feelings of, like, that happened, and then you're, as being an adoptee, I think you've seen it, like the idea of, like,
Mhm.
I have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Like somewhere it just comes into your world that, okay, for me not to be kicked out or,
Yeah.
let go of, I have to make sure that I put a good face. And so
Yeah.
I need to make sure I'm always happy and always good and being always obedient, right?
Yeah.
In that sense, because that's also how you're also a good member of the church. And now I have to be
Yeah.
a good Mormon. So I'm a
Yeah. You
good
got that
daughter.
both directions, don't you? Wow.
I'm a good
Oh.
Mormon. I'm just in a good sense. But then being a teenager, and then you start figuring out maybe your sexuality, and then that comes into it, and you're like, oh, now I
Ah.
have this to struggle with. So
Yeah.
not only am I struggling with being perfect, I'm struggling with my sexuality. And I know that it all ties against the church.
Yeah.
So now I'm feeling maybe bad. And then sometimes I have made mistakes where my parents punish me in a way that I don't like being punished.
Mhm.
So that's, so all these expectations and all
Mhm.
these feels of inadequacy just start building up. And it's like, how do you manage that? How do
Yeah.
you manage being perfect and all that?
So hard.
And trying to be good while still going, why do I feel this way? Why am I doing this? And then, quote unquote, in the background, one of the things I did starting in middle school is I started using ibuprofen as a emotional painkiller.
Oh,
Like that started
really?
becoming a thing when I was like, maybe that will manage the pain that I'm dealing with because
Oh,
there's just
wow.
so much going on emotionally.
Did you use it in large doses or just regular?
Oh yeah, like I was building myself up to it because I was like, maybe the more I take, the
Oh,
less the pain will be. Or even if I do feel pain, at least it's better than
oh,
emotional pain.
wow. It's really dangerous, huh?
It is. Oh yeah.
Mm.
And at that time too, the church was very big about when it came to mental health is you pray it away, or if you pray
Oh.
hard enough, or if you read your scriptures harder,
Mm.
you will be able to
Uh,
be healed of this,
yeah, some
this
sort of spiritual problem.
this
Ah.
affliction.
Mm.
And so that was a struggle for me. And so it came to the point by high school that I had to beg my parents for help. And that
Mhm.
was scary, but also the realism that I felt suicidal, and
Wow.
that was a scary feeling. Again, especially most religions, like suicide is not a good option
Yeah.
if you want to go to heaven.
Yeah.
So,
That's a ticket to hell right there. Oof.
right. You're just trapped in everything you do. And so I finally just begged them to get me the help I needed, which they did. So I was able to graduate from high school and then go
Mhm.
get help.
What did that look like?
So I went to an institution for about maybe 4 to 6 months
Wow.
where I broke up my perfectionist lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
which was nice. I kind of was able to feel emotions. Like I was able to finally cry for the first time. I was finally able to kind of feel anger, even though I still was uncomfortable with that
Mm-hmm.
feeling, because
I bet.
I think you learn that anger is not good
Yeah.
either. And so everything is very black and white, I think, for adoptees, in the sense that it's either you're good, you're bad, you're
Mm-hmm.
loved, you're not loved.
Yeah.
And I think it's so hard to deconstruct that, but there are ways to definitely slow it down. And I think that was the biggest thing that I got from that help. But even in that, like I had a relapse where I OD'd on ibuprofen to the point where I
Wow.
was hospitalized, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
that can kill you. Ibuprofen. I
hmm,
even
yeah,
tell parents of any kid like 10 and up to just lock all your over the counter drugs up and all your prescription drugs too. But kids can overdose on anything.
hmm,
I think ibuprofen literally will kill you, and it can certainly do big damage to your liver.
yeah,
Yeah. And my kid got into
definitely.
cough medicine and about killed
Hmm.
himself a couple times taking a whole box of Benadryl or whatever. So it's terrifying.
Yeah, and it's hard because it's like that thing where people think, I mean, realistic, yes, it's ridiculous and crazy, but it's this weird thought or moment in our mind where it's like, but that's how I control the situation.
Right.
I don't have any control of anything right
Yeah.
now. So this is where I find myself.
You're just trying to grab something to ease the
Right.
pain, right? So if
Hmm.
parents can remove some of the possibilities,
Right.
like put that stuff away so the kids can't grab it.
Mhm.
We don't often think about it until it's too late. So,
Right.
oof, I've never heard of someone using ibuprofen like that, but that's really scary.
Mhm.
And when you were hospitalized, what kind of treatments did they give you? Did they do DBT or any of those kind of things? Or
I got DBT much later when I went back to get help again the second time.
okay,
But I got a lot of like talk therapy,
uh-huh.
definitely being able to learn unmasking. How do you unmask your
Mm,
feelings and say, you don't have to be this person with me. You can be
yes.
yourself. Or like I said, this was a perfectionism where it's like when I was younger, it's about, here's an assignment. And I'm like, let me get it done
Yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah.
And it's like,
The
this
sooner
is due
the
next month. Oh,
yeah,
you don't
no,
need to do that. But it's like, I have to.
I get you.
So,
I wonder if you were like, though, I don't even know who I am. Like when they said,
mhm,
you can be yourself here. And
mhm.
if I were you, I'd be like, oh, I don't even know who that is.
Right, and I mean, at that time too is weird because I was thinking like, I should leave the church. Like, it doesn't sound like it's good for me because what kind of God would do this kind of
Uh-huh.
mindset? And so that was a thought. And then also I'm meeting other people who are LGBT in the psych ward too, and say like,
Oh,
okay, maybe it is okay. Maybe I can be okay with my sexuality. But it is also kind of hard too, because just like with anything, when you're thrown back into your environment where you have that toxicity or you have the expectations, you kind of find yourself back. And
yeah.
that's what I did when I got back, because I
Okay.
came home, I took a semester off of college before I came back to school just so I could help myself. But then again, I'm with my family. So I'm going back to church. I'm trying to be a
Oh,
good Mormon again. I'm trying to be a good daughter again.
oh,
And so this pattern started to the point where I got called on my mission because I
oh,
got committed to that again. And I got called Mandarin Chinese speaking in
oh,
Vancouver, Canada. And I was terrified because at this time I have a very negative idea of what China is, because my
oh,
parents taught me that China was not good because of the one child policy,
yeah,
because of how they treated their citizens, all these things. So it's
yeah,
not ideal. And I hadn't dealt with that kind of trauma before, and
oh,
I didn't know what it was at the
oh.
time. So I got sent to my mission. People are trying to speak Chinese with me. I'm overwhelmed.
Do you speak Mandarin?
A little bit,
A little.
a little bit. Indian, Indian.
Do you
Yeah.
remember any of it from when you were 4 or you've worked on it?
No, I worked on it.
Yeah, your language got lost, I bet.
Yeah, sadly. But at that time, yeah, I was having a faith crisis, and I also was having a identity crisis because I'm
Ah,
speaking with my people, and I'm like, these are not my people. Like, I'm panicking. And so I found myself one night going to the ocean, because that's how close we were, trying to drown myself because I would rather be
oh,
dead
wow.
than having to deal with that. And
Oof.
again, I got sent back.
Wow.
And that's when I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Uh-huh.
And that's when I got taught about DBT.
Okay. Dialectical behavior therapy. Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I got that interrogated into me about the whole, how do you not make that your, because it's hard and it's scary to make that your thought. Like, I'm so stressed. I'm so worried about this situation. All I can think about is death. That's the only way I can
Yeah.
go. Again, right? You're trapped because you don't think you have
Yeah.
solutions. There are no
Yeah.
options. The people that you think are supposed to be supportive aren't supportive. What are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
And so I had to get help again. And
Wow.
of course, again, that helps, slows that down, helps you figure out, okay, I'm feeling this. What should I do about that versus going death, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Go right to death. I know my son
Mm-hmm.
does the same thing. It's terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And on the outside, you're like, well, there's so many options. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much support. But
Mm-hmm.
for him, sometimes he sees no other options. He's
Yeah.
like, nope, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And boy, I can relate from my son's angle. I've certainly, I have never experienced that depth of pain before, but
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it in my son. And I'm so sorry that you've had to deal
Yeah.
with that.
Well, I appreciate it. And it's scary too, because again, the church's way of thinking of it and my parents' way of thinking of it was you need to just pray or you need to get a blessing. You need to do things to
Yeah.
help yourself get through this. And like I said, at this whole time too, I'm not even thinking about my adoption. I'm not thinking that this has anything to do with me being an adoptee because there's so much of the church and my sexuality and
Yeah.
just my family and the way that their standards were just
Yeah.
so heavy on me to the point where I really didn't start questioning anything about my adoption until the pandemic, which is so funny because so many people
Oh.
say this. I've heard it, that the pandemic is what kind of forced them to think for themselves in that sense of their identities. When you hear about Asian hate, and at that point I was like, wait,
Yeah. Oof, that was tough.
I'm Chinese.
It is tough.
I'm Chinese. It's like, oh, I'm part of that. And so that kind of shock and reality of
Yeah.
having to deal with that. Like, I've never really thought about myself as Chinese.
Mm.
I've always been told not to think in that sense because
Not to associate yourself. Wow.
I'm a banana, right? I'm white in the inside
Ah,
and on the outside kind of mindset. And so
yeah.
it never came across where these
Mm,
matters or these situations impacted me. Like if I came up and
mm.
someone, we just happened, people say things insensitively about COVID to me. And at first I don't understand, but then I have to realize, this is about
Ah.
me. Okay. Like I need to figure out
Oh,
that for
man.
myself.
You mean people actually said it's your fault, COVID came from you,
Right. Or
go back to your
right. And you're like, I've lived
did
here
they do that
for
really?
years. It's like, how would I have
Oh,
brought it there? Can you explain
yeah.
that? So,
Yeah.
uh,
Oh, that's so terrible. I'm so sorry.
mm.
Oh gosh. So you were getting all sorts of Asian hate kind of in that whole turmoil there. That was so horrible. And then also you probably have more time to think and you were sitting online. Maybe did you find other groups of adoptees at that time?
No. So
No?
actually, thankfully, I had a friend who was also an adoptee. But what really helped is, again, this whole going back and forth with, I'm a Mormon, I live it, I love it, I'm not gay, I'm going to marry a man one day. It's like all these rhetorics. I'm finally finding myself in this point when I was in my graduate program, and I finally realized that I am in two worlds, and it is so hard to play in these two worlds, and I have to pick a side. And that was kind of the thing that I think forced me to allow myself to start discovering myself. So once I said, in Mormon church, I gotta go. I can't be myself if I stay with you guys, and I can't be
Yeah.
happy if I stay with you guys. And so I wrote a letter, made my resignation, and said, I'm done. And that freed me a lot from the sexuality situation and from discovering myself, because now I could be able to say, now it's my chance to finally ask the questions, because
Yeah.
for years I haven't had the answers to my questions, and now I can do that. And so the first thing I did when I decided to move to Portland was I decided I'm going to find adoptee friends. Like I'm going to figure out what this
Ah,
part of me is that I have been
okay.
holding back for so long, and
Mm-hmm.
figure what that is. And so that was something I focused on. And then of course I went, and at the time I had a partner, I still have a partner, and going with her and her being able to learn my religion and learn kind of my
Mm-hmm.
struggles and try to understand,
Mm-hmm.
I understand how maybe you got to these thinkings, and now we're going to help you get out of that. And so having
Okay.
someone that being that supportive, and that had helped a lot as well
Mm.
to help me come to that self-discovery of, okay, I'm Chinese. I need to start relearning my language. I want to start understanding cultural things. I want to hear other people's stories about how that impacts them. And then on top of that, finally saying to myself, I think I have a right and a desire to look now for my birth family. Because the only reason I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to is because it just made sense, right? In a short mindset of, oh, I'll just see them when they're dead. And I kind of thought
Oh,
maybe I don't want to see them when they're dead. Maybe I want to see them now. Maybe I have that chance. And
yeah.
I took it, and that
Yeah.
has been its own journey.
Yeah. And so have you found them yet? It's really hard to find Chinese birth parents, no?
It is. It is. So I did the 23andMe. I found a possible second cousin through that, which was exciting. And so I had
Okay.
short communications with him, possibly seeing where I fit in the family tree. But sadly, we haven't been speaking since probably last year. So that's been a little frustrating. But I
Hmm.
think that's one thing that I've had to learn, and that my significant other has kind of had to remind me multiple times, is it's not an easy journey. It's not like you can just find their name in a Google search and you can
Yeah.
find them. And so of course I put my poster out there. I think I'm trying to get my data into the 23 Mofang. So that's
Oh,
the
okay.
Chinese database. So I'm waiting
Chinese
for
version.
that. And then the GED match is another location I
Okay.
have as well. So I'm putting all my feelers out here. And so that's kind of where I am on that journey. But at the same time, I'm also trying to move in other directions. Like, let's start working on your healing journey. Let's start working on, your connection with your culture. And part of that journey, I realized, was telling my story.
Hmm.
Because I think for years I've been told on my mother's side and my father's side that they're excited that the next book one day they'll do is my book. And I'm just very not
Oh,
excited.
there we're going to do a book about
Right.
your beautiful adoption,
Right. And
right?
I told them if I join in your book, I would have to tell the truth of what adoption really is, because I don't think it's as rainbows and unicorns as you think it is. And I think I would
Hmm.
want people to know that.
Yeah. And did they say, okay, sure, that sounds fine?
I mean, I think yes, to the extent, but it is still this argumentative, and I think with many people, it's the experiences, right? And I talked to my father about it recently, where he's like, well, our experience was different than your experience. And when I want to make sure
Hmm.
people know that. And I think there is a right to someone's experiences, but
Hmm.
not appropriate to invalidate other people's experiences. To
Right,
say,
right.
I respect that that's how the adoption process went with you, or how I grew up
Hmm.
went with you, but I am my own individual, and I felt things like I felt inadequate. I felt, why do I feel these feelings? And to not get that comfort or that acknowledgement of, oh, let me help
Yeah.
you with that. Let's go through
Yeah.
that process, versus, oh, we can't, or we have to, deal with one child at a time. And you have 6 children. I can respect that
Ah,
to an extent, but even if with 6 children, you have children struggling, it's kind of almost a natural feeling like you want to help your child. And so
yeah.
that was really hard to have that. And even now, when it comes to my search for a birth family, or that the support that I can get for them is more limited than expected, just because you would hope that they're like,
Mm,
oh, you want to search or you want this, let's do that for you. Let's support you on that, more
mm.
than my money's my money, or you need to deal with other stuff
Oh,
before you do that. Or maybe you should just write a book and that'll be good enough
uh,
for you. And it's like,
mm.
I appreciate your thoughts, but it's my journey at the end. And if you want to be part of it, you got to support it, not
Yeah.
criticize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Adoptive parents, are you listening? If you want to stay engaged with your child, you got to stay on board
Mm-hmm.
with wherever their journey takes them. And gosh, that happens so often in reunion.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard so many times either adoptees wait until their adoptive parents are dead
Mm-hmm.
before they even start. And then maybe their birth parents are also gone by that time, or they completely sever ties with their adoptive family, which is really understandable. And it's tragic because it didn't have to be like that. There's love enough for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Like if you find your birth parents, that doesn't mean you aren't going to love your adoptive parents anymore. It just means now you have more people to love.
Well, yeah. And I have a really good friend that, kind of reminds me, though, that, the experience could be anything from you finding your parents to realizing maybe your parents aren't the best people you thought.
Yeah, that could
Or
happen
maybe there's
too.
going to be a lot of their guilt that's now going to be put on you to deal with. So, you
Mm-hmm.
definitely have to be prepared. But it feels almost like a natural thing that if my 2 cents is if you're going to adopt a child into this world, I think you have to realize all the areas you're going to support that child in.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes when people adopt kids or when they have kids, they just look at, I'm just responsible for this amount of time with you. After that,
Yeah.
you do your thing, versus, no, you adopted someone. You now are responsible for their emotions. You're responsible for their
Oh,
healing. You're responsible if they decide to do a reunion, you're responsible for that, whether it be financially or not, but you are responsible. When you signed
yeah.
that paper and said, I want this child,
Yeah.
that's what you asked for. So if you don't think you signed up for that, then Yeah.
Think again. Yeah,
And
because you didn't have a say in the whole thing at all.
oh yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've heard another adoptive parent who's a therapist, Brooke Randolph, was on our show, and she said that if you adopt intercountry, that you need to expect to make trips to that country, multiple trips to that country. And you need to expect that there will be a reunion involved. You need to expect that there will be therapy involved, and just calculate that in.
Right.
And you can't just expect you take them from a whole different country and then that's it. I don't think most intercountry adoptive parents think that. I didn't. I thought, okay, Japan was lovely. Thank you so much, Japan. And here we go. We're going over here now. So it's really a big deal.
Well, yeah, part of it is, I think, right at the end of it all is love. People want to love a child. They want to give their love to a child. But I think, especially, I mean, that's the big thing that my family would say. I thought, we love you equally. And in my realm, it's like, okay, but I do have different needs than my siblings.
Yeah.
Can you recognize that? And I think when that's not recognized, that's why I think I've met so many different adoptees where we find them at this point of going, why wasn't I told this? Or why didn't we do this? And some parents do it. And I think it's wonderful that they do. And the parents who don't, that's where I find this little community of adoptees who are like, well, here we are, we're 30 something plus, and now we're looking, and now we're trying to figure ourselves out. And that relationship with our parents, it's hard. It's hard for them to kind of accept why we're doing what we're doing, or why do you feel that way, or those things.
Very tricky. Now, you're in Portland, Oregon. Did you connect with Adoption Mosaic there?
Yes, I did. I did.
Yay, Adoption Mosaic. Their director, Astrid, was on the show earlier too. I'll put that link in. She's amazing. And I noticed they have pizza parties. They have all sorts of in-person get-togethers, which, oh man, we wish we had that here for Joey. So that must be really nice.
I think I also joined, they have panels. You can be part of panels if you want. So I've signed up for that. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great organization. And they do things worldwide, really. You don't have to be in Portland. But if you are in Portland, go play, have fun with other adoptees. That's so great.
And definitely with that, I think, organization as well. And the other ones that I've met here, it's also the learning. It's like, while you are on this journey healing, while you are understanding your journey itself, you are able to learn other people's journeys and understanding of other people's experiences. And I think that's something that sometimes I think we forget when we're on our journeys. It's okay, I'm just going to focus on myself. But then you meet adoptees who are from India, who are local. And it's almost that moment where I think we want to deny that we are similar to them. But the reality is we are similar to them. We had that same experience. Whether we came from a different place, we had that same emotion of belonging, that sense of just being comfortable with ourselves.
Yeah. Did your family kind of subscribe to the colorblind theory of race? Like, no, you're just like us, that kind of thing?
I think yes, in the sense, and in two ways, I guess. One is the religious idea of it, in the sense that one of the things that happens in Mormonism is when you're about a teenager or older, you have the right to get something called a patriarchal blessing, which puts you in one of the tribes of Israel.
Oh, wow.
So you can either be adopted into a tribe or you are born into a tribe. And so everyone expected, oh, well, you're adopted. You probably were adopted into a tribe. And then I was said that I was in a tribe. So it's like you are connected based off of this ideology, or a sense of Mormonism is very interesting when it comes to the race idea of it, where you learn the good people are the white people, the bad people are the dark people. Oh, you're a Mormon, so you're fine, Sariah. You're fine.
Okay, you kind of got a pass,
right? You got those things, but I think yes, most of the time, I think I was colorblind in the sense that I grew up very much in a white family. I grew up with a white culture. I grew up in a Mormon culture as well that just did not recognize that unless it was, oh, you need a scholarship, use your race card. It's like, oh, okay. If you want to do that, use this card. And so I think there's moments where like, okay, sure. But yeah, I don't think I've even had a cousin once ask me, like, when we grew up, I never knew that you were Chinese. I just thought you were dark skinned. I'm like, I don't know if that's a nice thing or not.
I know, that could have been.
Right. So definitely, like I said, it wasn't an issue, but like I said, I didn't know it was an issue until I got older.
Didn't know what you didn't know.
Right.
Yeah. Did they try to bring in your Chinese culture, like food or anything?
Bits and pieces. I'd say there were times where, it'd be Chinese New Year and my dad would, give me the red envelope or something, or I'd ask like, hey, I want to learn a Chinese dish. But again, and I think it's just crazy. And it comes down to just, again, my plea for people who want to adopt children is that my parents expressed that I didn't show interest in it. Therefore, I
Oh.
didn't care or didn't want to, so they just didn't push it.
So you didn't ask for something you didn't know existed. So
I didn't ask appropriately. Right. I didn't know, right? I have to ask permission to know my culture. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But okay.
Yeah. How are you supposed to know what to ask for?
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea. You're just like a fish out of water. Yeah, that's horrible. So you think adoptive parents should provide opportunities?
Right, exactly.
Whether your child asks for them or not, provide opportunities.
I would say so. Just because you do get these, and I said, I had that once happen to me. I reached out actually recently to an adoptee that I believe we were probably from the same orphanage. And I remember getting so excited, like, oh, we're part of the same orphanage. I wonder what her journey's like. And it was very different. And it was the very much, I don't want to know about them. I'm, a lot of anger and hurt. And, it threw me back like, oh, I just assumed that your parents would want, but that's her journey. And if she's happy with her adoptive family and that's her forever family, I'm very happy for her. But on my end, I had accept that I'm not feeling that same way about my family. So maybe I need to figure out what that is for me. So I don't feel that weird separation of I have a family, but I don't have a family feeling.
Yeah, that must just feel like no man's land in the middle there. Have you connected with besides that person, other Chinese adoptees? There's a lot of you.
Yeah, there are a few. I think, especially with the little group that I have that I usually hang out mostly with, most of our groups, I argue that they're not in that same search. And again, we don't have to all be on the same page. But I think there are sometimes, especially when you're in different parts of your journey, that I find it more comfortable going, I want to be able to talk to people who are looking, or I want to talk to people who are feeling these emotions about their parents and going, oh, I never thought about what my parents were doing was actually hurtful. Or I think the biggest thing is like we accept the love that we think we deserve. And we don't know what that really looks like because we don't have that appropriate role model if we have parents who weren't understanding of that area of our trauma. Honestly, my mom just recently gave me the book, The Body Keeps Score. And it's hard because it came from her versus like, oh, thank you. Like, is this supposed to make me feel better? So, I mean, I heard it's a good read and I want to read it for sure. But I think it's hard when it's like trauma and triggering moments in that with that delivery.
Did it make you feel like, here, read this book and do what it says because you're broken? Is that kind of how it felt?
I think for her, I think it was more of, I think she was trying, I guess it's a gesture of her like saying, hey, this might help.
Okay.
But it's that feeling of, and I say this a lot to my partner and my friends, is that I just wish I had the relationship of the mother-daughter relationship. Yeah. That's what I would want more than a book. But we can't have that. And that's just mostly because lack of acknowledgement and the lack of recognition of, hey, my feelings are this, and can you acknowledge that? And it's hard when someone won't. So how do you move forward with that? You can't.
It's tough. And I have some things in common with you. I am not the same religion as my parents. I broke off as an adult. And I also am gay. I didn't figure mine out until I was like in my 40s. But yeah, my family, it's a bit strained. We still are talking, but it's like big chunks of my life I just can't really talk about.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you feel like that sometimes?
Well, definitely. And that was what was hard about this journey and my movement in here with kind of what did we talk about that in the sense of when I asked my parents, like, hey, could you possibly financialize this journey? Here are the numbers. I've done all this stuff for you. Don't you worry. To get those responses like, oh, hey, I got to take care of myself, but I'll support you however you want. Or my father like, oh, you need to deal with this and this first before you do that. And I'm glad that you're honest about where you are with the journey. But it feels a little disheartening in that sense of, okay, well, I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting them to give me money, but I was expecting to have a little bit more of a conversation about it than just.
What do you think is more of a barrier for your parents, that you're not Mormon anymore or that you're gay? Or is it a combination of the two?
I would say it's kind of funny because my father actually left the church 5 years ago. Actually, I'm out. So he left. And so he's quote unquote really supportive of my journey. I think it's just hard because I couldn't make a choice solid choice when it will happen. So I probably would say that I've maybe threatened to leave the church multiple times. I've expressed my sexuality in different ways just because I didn't know at the time, or I was just trying to figure yourself out, and labels itself are already difficult. And I think for my parents, it's just, why has it taken you this long to do these things in a simple way? Like your brother just came out gay and is fine. Why did you have to do 500 steps and then come out gay? And it's like,
did you come out non-binary or something first? Or
I came out lesbian when I was high school, and that didn't go well. So I redacted it.
Yeah. Back in the closet you go.
Then in college, I learned about pansexuality. And then I came out, I was like, maybe I'm biromantic, and then maybe I'm bisexual. And then I'm like, okay, I'm just comfortable being called gay. And so I think for them, because I played the part, I went back and I like on and off. I did on-off switch of being Mormon one day and not being Mormon, then being Mormon. And so my parents just couldn't understand why I couldn't just choose. Like, if you're going to do that, just make your decision. It's like, because in all honesty, like, I'm afraid of how you judge me, the way that I decide to make choices, even if I don't want to, even if I try to be myself, I can't help but think, what will my parents do? Or my worst one is like, I'm going to get in trouble if I do this. And it's unhealthy. Like, again, a lot of these self-talks that we do, and we have these weird thoughts in our head that don't make sense to anybody, but we feel them. And so when we say like, oh, I thought you'd be really angry when I told you I was gay, and they're like, why would you think that? Or they are angry. And it's like, well, see, and now and that's why I didn't tell you, because now you react like this. Now I feel like I'm a bad person. And it comes back to that whole, and that's my big struggle, is the whole bad versus good, right? And it comes from that trauma. So it's just like,
yeah, for sure. That's adoption trauma right there, that I'm not good. If I were good, I wouldn't have been relinquished or abandoned. So yeah, that's super core. And then if your adoptive parents kind of reinforce that by having black and white expectations of you, or you're not being gay the right way, or you're not doing it right.
Well, yeah, I had one time where I was at Pride with my dad. I think it was before he physically left the house, and he took me to Pride. And then afterwards he was like, I hope this experience allows you to come out of the closet. It's like, thank you for coming. It's not your decision of when I come out. And so that was hard. Because at the time I was still actively a member. And so it's like, right, I'm trying to please my mother, I'm trying to please the church, I'm trying to please my dad, I'm trying to please myself. And I think that's the biggest thing that I'm having to learn on this journey is how to focus on myself, is how to ask myself, what do you need, Sariah? What do you want from this whole experience? Instead of having those moments where I trip up and kind of go, oh no, if I do this podcast, or I do this, my mom's gonna be mad at me. It's like, it's not about her, it's about you, Sariah. And it's an everyday fight.
I get it. I have a lot of that kind of people pleasing too, for different reasons, but I get that. And it goes really deep. It's not just on the surface. And so it just pops up when you're not even expecting it to. I get that. But how are you prioritizing your own needs? Is there any like practices you do, or therapy, or anything that you could recommend?
Yeah. I am currently not in therapy right now, but one of the things that I found, and I think you've had a few podcasts about it, and it's true, and I love it, it's poetry. So I like writing. I'm a writer, and I think writing is one of those things that allows you to feel your emotions, whatever it is. So you could write an angry poem, you can write a sad poem, and people can be all confused again, right? Why are you writing this? Why are you okay? It's like, no, I'm just feeling. Let me feel. And so I think that's been something that I've had. One of the greatest tricks that I also obtained from my amazing partner is something called the backpack of truths. And it's like my favorite thing ever. So sometimes when you get in those mindsets of like, I'm not good enough, or these thoughts, it's like, what are your truths? Well, what do you know to be true? I'm like, well, I know that I'm a nice person. It's like, okay. And so it's just being able to regurgitate, I think, the things that you know about yourself that people can't say something bad about it. And then it's called your backpack of truths, and it always goes along with you. And it's just the sweetest thing, because you can expand your backpack as much as you want, but it allows you to kind of make you feel acknowledged, right? It's that acknowledgement and acceptance, but from yourself, which is, I think, a beautiful feeling. And so that is one of the greatest little toolkits I ever got from someone.
That's a good, I love that backpack of truth. I love that. I do something similar. I used to always just wish people would give me the approval that I imagined. Like, I wish I could give them a script. I wish you would say this to me because I just did this great thing. And so what I did, because no one ever gave me what I really wanted, right? They never say it quite right. I write it to myself every night. I give myself whatever approval I wish somebody else would have told me. So I just do it myself. It really fills up that need.
Right.
It sounds kind of similar. Like we got to fill it up ourselves because we can't just wait around for other people to give us what we want, because half the time we don't even know what we want. And we can't expect other people to be out of themselves enough to even figure it out, even if they wanted to.
But I think that's what's also great about getting older is that you do start really putting yourself first. And that's the thing that I'm happy that I've obtained now that I'm in my 30s, is to have that sense of, okay, for me, like I have done my time for everyone else. I have done it for everyone else. And now
you almost died for it a couple of times.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Whew. You deserve all of it. You get to do whatever you want. I give you, you don't need my permission, but I give you permission to just fully explore who Sariah is and just enjoy the rest of your life. You don't have to please anybody.
Right.
Just yourself.
I think it's just, like you're talking about, just these multiple layers of, I think we just growing up from, I think the moment that we have recognition as we are children of these identities. Oh, I'm Chinese, I'm a Mormon, I'm this, and then coming to your own at the end of the day, that it's crazy to see how those can impact you and make you feel like this is what you are. Because you are this, you must be this. And now it's like, okay, no, I am no longer Mormon. I'm no longer stuck in that realm of being ashamed of being gay or being ashamed of being adopted. I now recognize that these are my labels, but now I have the voice to it, and you or no one else can take that and say, no, you're supposed to be this, because that's what this is. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can expand however it needs to go for you. Well, I want to support you however I can to become who you are as fully as possible. And I know that you have a YouTube channel and TikTok and all that. What is your handle? Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah. No worries. Yeah. My handle is the Adoptee Apostate.
All right. I love that. Apostate. I think that means you went against your religion, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I love that.
So that'd be perfect. So I'm really new to it all. So one of the things that I just started installating was I found some of my old poetry from when I was getting help and dealing with that. So I started posting that recently just because I was like, I wonder how people will think. I realized I had to actually put captions though, because I didn't know, because people started messaging, like asking if I was okay. And I was like, no, I'm okay. These are just poems. These are poems. I'm just submitting poems out here.
It's not a cry for help.
Not a cry for help. I'm good. I'm thriving, not surviving. So
good. Yeah. Is there any poetry you'd like to read to us on the episode?
You got me on a good spot. I could.
I should have asked you this ahead of time.
Yeah, let me pull up a poem. So somehow this one is nice, and I don't remember what the context is, but I think it has to do with, it's a hopeful one, and I really like it, but it's called Walls versus Gates. And so I'll read it. Yeah. So it says, walls can keep us safe. They can keep us in. Gates have opportunity that can let us out, but they need a key. As my life goes, I encounter walls and gates every day. I sometimes even make my own. In my life, I've seen mostly walls. I've built walls, but maybe it's time to go make some gates and some keys. Except ignoring the gates. They are already there for me. Maybe I need freedom. Maybe I need to use these keys. Walls can keep us safe, but my walls have enclosed me, not given me much. A key cannot get me out. I need a gate. I need to open up, use my key. I need to start my life using my walls and gates properly and always having a key to let me out and learn.
Oh, that's beautiful. And that's a beautiful image. And that's very empowering.
Thank you.
I love that. Thank you. That's really interesting. I'm going to be thinking about walls and gates and keys.
Yeah.
That's very interesting because we can make our own gates, put a gate in a wall, right?
Yeah. I think I was doing that one during therapy. So it's like this idea that one of the things I always learned that was the shame wall. You just have so much shame about yourself. That's like, it's not you, it's them. Let yourself go. Yeah.
Oh, well, I admire you so much. I haven't known you for very long at all, but I just can imagine you just blossoming and blooming and to 100% of your whole authentic self. And I just can't wait to watch that happen. And I'm really glad that you got a hold of me and that we were able to get to know each other a bit.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it too. And thank you for all the stories you've had. And I said, they helped me a lot. And that's kind of what helped me kind of go, this is a person I want to check out and talk to as well. So I think you've done a lot on your end too to
thank you.
Get here.
Do you have any advice for adoptive parents before we go? Or for adoptees?
I guess, for adoptees, my biggest advice for them is to ask. Is if you need something, whether it be therapy, whether it's understanding your story, whether it's being able to know your identity, ask. And if they don't want to tell you, keep asking. And there are ways, like I said, we have these resources now to allow you to do that search. If you can't do that safely in your home, it's through our amazing groups like Mosaic and these podcasts where you can find yourself less alone, because even if you feel the safest in your adopted home, there's always going to be that call, I think, internally in you asking to know who you are in that area of your life.
And you deserve to know that for sure. Oh, well, thank you so much, Sariah. How can people find your poetry and your TikTok and your YouTube? Is it they just search?
Yeah, the Adoptee Apostate is the same. So Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Yeah. So that's where they'll find me.
Okay. That's it. Go subscribe or whatever you do. I can't do the TikTok thing. I can't do it. But I know that the younger people do that. I'm starting to feel really old. I'm 55, but I never dreamed that I would be kind of out of the mainstream, but I think I'm getting there. But I'm glad you're there because we need to see as many young adult adoptees as possible. There's a lot of people my age out there, but I think there needs to be lots more of you that are 20s, 30s. That's really important, I think. So, well, thank you again. And those of you who are listening, please share this episode with anyone you know. Maybe you know a Chinese adoptee or an adoptive family or another intercountry adoptive family, or maybe you know someone with a gay kid, adopted or not, or maybe you just want to help people understand all of these multiple layers that are inherent in adoption's complexities. So share the episode. That would really help us out. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and find Unraveling Adoption at unravelingadoption.com. We have a support group there. There's information about the coaching I do there. You can find all of our episodes there, and everything's just go there, unravelingadoption.com. Thank you all for listening. Sariah and I want you all to stay safe.